about an actual cell, okay, let's say there's an animal cell here, and we'll draw all of the different parts, okay? Draw the little ribosomes on it. We'll make the mitochondria. Okay, there's more than one mitochondria, little water vacuoles here and there. This is your typical cell, okay? Yes, it's missing a lot of stuff. We don't care. When we want to talk about making an analogy to an actual cell and a city, what we're trying to do is we're trying to say that the different organelles in the cell have specific jobs to do. They have functions. The nucleus is the control center of the cell, where all the decisions are made to make this whole cell stay alive, right? The mitochondria makes energy for the cell. It allows the cell to have energy for it to survive. The endoplasmic reticulum allows for transportation throughout the cell. The cell membrane protects what's inside the cell from what's outside. If we want to make an analogy to a city, let's take the island of Montreal. Okay, let's take the island of Montreal. Let's pretend that the actual city of Montreal is really kind of right here. This is the city of Montreal. Okay, so right now, Trafalgar School for Girls is in the city of Montreal. So let's say that this is the city of Montreal. We'll call this, okay, Montreal. Now, here's the mountain in the middle of the city. Okay, here's the Beaver Lodge where we have Girls for the Cure. All right, there's where we skate up on the hill. Trafalgar is right here. Okay, and in Montreal, there's all kinds of roads. We know that. There's streets here. We have big buildings on the streets. We've got houses everywhere. Okay, we know this. Yes? Now, near the old port, we have a very big building known as City Hall. City Hall is where the mayor works and all of the councillors in the city. And they're in charge of making laws and rules for all of the people that live in the city. So we can say that if we want to compare these guys, if we want to make, now this is called making an analogy. So if we want to make an analogy between the city of Montreal and a cell, okay, let's actually talk about the organelles and then the equivalent inside a city. So first thing we have is the nucleus. Okay, the nucleus is in charge of the cell. Well, in a city, who is in charge of the actual city and making sure it runs well is the mayor at City Hall. That's where all the rules and decisions and laws are made. Okay? What's another organelle in my picture? Give me another organelle.
The mitochondria.
The mitochondria. So my nucleus here is in purple. I will underline it in purple. Okay? It does the same thing that City Hall does. My mitochondria, I'm underlining in red. These are my mitochondria. The role of the mitochondria is to do what? What does it do in a cell? It what? It produces energy through cellular respiration. Okay? We learned about photosynthesis last year. We're going to learn about cellular respiration this year and next year. Cellular respiration is getting energy from sugar. Okay? So it makes energy. Now inside a city, if I turn my lights on right now, here, turn the light on. Where does that energy come from? It comes from, in Montreal, Hydro-Quebec. from the power lines on the streets. So this house here, this house right here, there are big power lines that... Okay, so we know that our mitochondria is like the power lines. We're going to talk about the endoplasmic reticulum now. So my endoplasmic reticulum, what is the purpose of the endoplasmic reticulum in the cell? What does it do?
Movement, like allows things to move.
It's basically a tube system to allow things to move around the cell more quickly. So in a city, what do you think would allow us to get around more quickly?
The streets.
Streets and roads. Roads and streets. So within my city of Montreal, I have my houses. And we all live on a street, and then we take this street to come to Trafalgar School. Okay, so the streets allow us to displace ourselves very quickly. They allow for us to transport things all over the city. Some of you will get on a bus later to go home, and that bus will follow a road. Some of you will take a metro and then take a bus. Okay, these are all examples of endoplasmic reticulum in a cell. They allow for transportation. They're going to allow you to get from here to home later. Okay? Another organelle we have are the vacuoles. Now, what do vacuoles do in a cell?
They hold water and nutrients.
They hold fluids, mostly water. What would hold water in our city? What holds the water for us?
Well, Hydro-Quebec.
No, Hydro-Quebec is electricity.
Reservoirs.
Reservoirs. Now, Montreal is an island, which means we are surrounded by water. Okay, so we don't necessarily have a reservoir here, but we have a very big body of water that comes right around the island of Montreal. What's this called? Where do we get our water? The Fleuve Saint-Laurent, the St. Lawrence. All the water. When you go home to the South Shore, do you take the Champlain Bridge or do you take the Metro?
Chamonix.
So you go over the St. Lawrence, which means you're going over our waterway. That's where we get our water from. But in the little hometown that I'm from, we actually have a reservoir of water. It's almost like a big lake. And that big lake is filled with water. And that water people use in their homes to drink. Okay, so a vacuole is like a reservoir of water. All right, it holds the water for the town. So that when I turn my tap on and water comes out, that water is coming from the vacuole of the city or the reservoir inside the city. What else? What else is there, do we see? Yep.
Cytoplasm.
Ooh, cytoplasm. Now, I would consider, cytoplasm, see all the white space in between the organelles in that cell? The cytoplasm, consider the cytoplasm to be like air here. Unfortunately, we don't have a good example of cytoplasm. Right now, the cytoplasm is all the slush and snow on the streets, making it hard for us to get around. Okay, it's freezing everybody in place. Okay, so in this case, it's either let's call it the slush or the snow. Slush on streets. Okay, what other organelle do we have?
Well, some sort of plants.
What did you want to say? Ribosomes. We have little ribosomes. All over the place. They're on the rough endoplasmic reticulum. What do ribosomes do? What do ribosomes do in a cell?
They make protein.
Ribosomes make proteins. Well, let's consider a ribosome to be a little bakery down the street that makes croissants. And we buy croissants, or we buy chip bags, or we buy cups of hot chocolate. Okay, so a ribosome would be a store or a restaurant, because it makes something that we want. Does that make sense? Do you see the analogies? Do you see the similarities of the explanation here? Okay, this question it's a hard one, okay, especially if English is not your first language, because it takes the idea of making an analogy to a cell, to something that's not at all like a cell. A city is not at all like a cell. Okay? Does this make any sense? Do you see the similarities? Okay.